In the early 20th century, Soviet filmmaker and film theorist Lev Kuleshov took leftover footage of Tsarist-era film star Ivan Moschukhin and cut together an experiment. A shot of a blank-faced Ivan was intercut with shots of a bowl of soup, a dead girl in a coffin, and a sexy lady on a couch. As the story goes, audiences who were shown this little short film read different expressions onto the neutral-faced actor, depending on the context he was edited into. This concept, which would later be dubbed the Kuleshov effect, would go on to form one of the fundamental pillars of the language of narrative film. One of the driving mechanisms behind this effect is likely the assumption of significance. Several decades before Kuleshov's experiment, a different Russian named Anton Chekhov wrote that one must never place a loaded rifle on the stage if it isn't going to go off. Good stories are generally economical, so if a detail is shown to us, we assume it must be important and try to figure out what it means. When I first saw Terminator 2, I was convinced that the T-1000 was going to mimic John Connor in the climax because of the emphasis given to this moment. The film takes the time to draw our attention to the T-1000's broken claw, emphasizes John's decision to touch it, then lingers on it as the robot reabsorbs it. I assumed there must be a reason our attention was directed towards this moment, and was sure that it would come back to bite our heroes somehow. It didn't. They'd even previously established that the T-1000 can't impersonate something smaller than itself.
Like he could disguise itself as a pack of cigarettes.
No, only an object of equal size.
But it's an example of how the subtext communicated by film language can override what's communicated by the text of the film. We assume there must be a reason we're being shown a man looking at a sexy lady, and come to the most likely conclusion that this juxtaposition is trying to tell us that he's horny. That's perfectly logical and not that much more interesting than reading pictograms. The interesting part is that this conclusion affects how we read the man's face. The audience assumed that the conclusion they came to due to the edit was actually based on something legible in Ivan's expression. Information that was implied to them through subtext is instead attributed to the text. The validity of this effect has actually been confirmed through more rigorous scientific experiments. Anyway, let's talk about Kevin. We Need to Talk About Kevin is a 2011 psychological drama directed by Lynn Ramsey, shot by Seamus McGarvey, and edited by Joe Beanie. Oh, by the way, spoilers for a 14-year-old movie. It follows a woman named Eva who lives as a pariah after her son Kevin murdered a whole bunch of people. The bulk of the movie consists of flashbacks to Kevin's childhood, which reveal him to be a spiteful, manipulative bad seed from birth. He blackmails his mother, kills a guinea pig, and blinds his little sister, all while everyone but Eva turns a blind eye to this obvious-born sociopath right up until he murders his father, sister, and classmates. Most reviews and reactions I've read interpret the film as an exploration of a bad seed, the potential horror of having a child who was genuinely born evil, and being blamed for the actions of said child after doing everything you could to warn the world about him. But here's what I find really interesting about this movie, and what I think makes it a masterclass in the fundamental building blocks of filmmaking. Kevin doesn't actually do anything wrong. Okay, up until he kills all those people, Kevin doesn't actually do anything wrong. Everything we think Kevin is doing, and everything Eva thinks Kevin is doing, is subtext, communicated through framing and editing. The manipulation, the pet death, the blinding, none of it actually happens on screen, nor do we see any actual evidence of it. We see Eva discover the guinea pig's corpse in the garbage disposal, she looks out the window, and we cut to Kevin playing tetherball. He feels his mother's gaze and looks up, his expression changing. We're shown two innocuous shots, and we create meaning across the cut. After Siri loses her eye, an event which we only see the aftermath of, Eva and Franklin talk with Kevin over lunch. Eva passive-aggressively thanks Kevin for calling the ambulance, while not so subtly blaming him for his sister's blinding, and we get an extreme close-up of Kevin messily peeling and biting into a lychee. It's the only close-up in a scene that is otherwise made up of straightforward single medium shots and one centered master, turning the innocuous consumption of a piece of fruit into something significant, a subtle, taunting admission of guilt. After Kevin's arm is broken, Eva is driving him home and wants to stop at the store, but Kevin wants to go straight home. Eva starts to argue, but we get a close-up of Kevin rubbing the scar on his arm, and Eva stops talking. Eva and the audience interpret this as an intentional act of emotional blackmail. The movie is full of these moments, Eva and Kevin sharing glances, emphasis given to eye contact, a smirk, a glare, convincing Eva and us that everything Kevin does is deliberate, malicious, and targeted. What's interesting is that all three of these examples of Kevin's implied sociopathy come after an action of Eva's. Eva runs the garbage disposal, crushing the guinea pig, which may have been what killed it, and immediately decides that Kevin is responsible. She bought a pet that her daughter was probably too young to properly care for, wrote it off as dead when it went missing after only a cursory search, then crushed it to pieces and immediately blamed her son, despite there being no evidence that he had anything to do with it. Guinea pigs are notorious for escaping and getting themselves into crazy and deadly escapades. There was no reason to suspect Kevin beyond her existing biases. Also, as an aside, guinea pigs are exotic pets, and you should probably not buy one. The cages that are sold by most pet stores are far too small for them to live comfortably in, and they require a level of specialized care and attention that is far greater than most people, let alone children, are capable of providing them. Guinea pigs are not naturally suicidal, they tend to die a lot because they are rarely adequately cared for. Series I is taken out by chemicals that Eva used to clean said guinea pig out of the drain, and while she insists she put them away, we don't actually see that. We just see her unlock the cabinet and take out the cleaning supplies, then cut to the next scene. It's only when Franklin throws blame her way that she starts blaming Kevin for it.
It was Kevin. Kevin did it.
We don't know if she left the chemicals out or not, and if we interpret the flashbacks that make up the brunt of the movie as her memories, Eva doesn't actually know either. Kevin's supposed emotional blackmail comes after his mother breaks his arm in a fit of rage, yet she finds a way to convince herself, and the editing convinces us, that she, the adult woman, is somehow the one being victimized. What fascinates me about this movie, and why I think it's a masterpiece on a formal level, is that the narrative that most people walk away with, of a poor woman cursed with a son who was evil from birth, is a narrative that is almost entirely communicated through framing and editing, and relatively simple framing and editing at that. This narrative is so powerful, despite being made up of juxtapositions rather than actual on-screen content, that it overrides the narrative that is actually shown on screen. Even discussion that is more critical of Eva takes the idea that Kevin killed the guinea pig and blinded his sister as objective facts, despite there being no actual on-screen evidence for either claim. If we do away with what the Kuleshov effect is telling us, the actual on-screen narrative of this film is one of a woman who openly resented her son from birth, interpreted every difficulty of parenting as malicious on his part, only enjoyed his company when he was sick and vulnerable, verbally bullied and physically attacked him when she got frustrated, and blamed him for every ill that befell the low-maintenance daughter that she, in contrast, heaped affection on until he murdered his dad, sister, and classmates. Even after the murders, Eva assumes that Kevin did it all just to spite her. And yet, all of this, which we are plainly shown on screen, is drowned out by the narrative that is implied through editing. Franklin is portrayed as hopelessly oblivious, and while his relationship with Kevin is superficial and he is ignorant of his obvious problems, his assessment of Eva's parenting is far from incorrect. There are also subtler details that I've never seen a review or discussion of the film mention. The lychee is one of the only times we actually see Kevin eat anything. The first thing he says in the film is that he isn't hungry.
Get something to eat?
No, not hungry.
And throughout the movie, we see him push food around, play with it, and throw it, but rarely eat it. When he and Eva are having their day out together, she, completely unprompted, starts talking about how much she hates fat people and how they need to eat less food.
Whenever I see fat people, they're always eating. Don't give me any of this slow metabolism, it's my glands crap. It's food. They're fat because they eat the wrong food. Too much of it and all the time.
Directly after this scene, we get another rare instance of him eating. Both times we see Kevin eat, it is in a context that Eva disapproves of. This leads into dinner, where Kevin once again plays with a rind of bread rather than eat it. Interestingly, the first time we see Siri, she's also playing with food and not eating it. The movie focuses on food quite a lot, actually. In the present timeline, Eva's guilt manifests through her meals. She runs into one of Kevin's shooting victims while getting a sandwich, and ends up eating an omelet full of eggshells after her eggs are implicitly smashed by the mother of one of Kevin's other victims in the grocery store. At her work party, a cigarette is put out in a cake, continuing the motif of food being abused and not eaten. Kevin also wears clothes that don't fit, is slow to potty train, and exhibits inappropriate sexual boundaries, which are all common signs of child sexual abuse.
It's just about fucking.
And yet, instead of interpreting this as a troubling sign of victimization, the framing leads us to view it as another sign of inherent inborn creepiness. Montage, another editing concept pioneered by the Soviets, is beautifully employed throughout the nonlinear free associative narrative. Disparate images are juxtaposed, compared, and contrasted across time and space. Through this editing style, we are shown Kevin's past behavior within the context of Eva's current persecution, cutting between Eva breaking down as she is harassed by trick-or-treaters and a toddler-aged Kevin refusing to eat his food. The baby food hitting the fridge rhymes with the children banging on the window, coloring the way we view the off-screen Kevin's behavior. Early in the film, a prisoner being tackled by prison guards and screaming for help cuts into Eva screaming while giving birth to Kevin, while her doctor tells her repeatedly to stop resisting. At the climax, shots of dead and injured students being wheeled out of the school are intercut with shots of Kevin shooting and shots of Eva languishing in bed, creating an implied shot and reaction shot between Kevin and Eva and drawing an equivalency between her and the shooting victims. The nonlinear editing style also allows the film to invert cause and effect. We see the ultimate result of teenage Kevin's actions and the sorry life his mother lives as a social pariah before we meet him as a baby, and this colors our interpretation of him and makes his mother's violent and petty reactions to relatively normal childhood behaviors
That's enough. Let Mom or Daddy talk. Kevin, quit that!
look like an understandable reaction to events that haven't happened yet. The temporal rearrangement makes Kevin's ultimate fate seem inevitable, and Eva's abuse of him seem precognitive and justified. We meet the parents and relatives of Kevin's victims when they're harassing Eva.
I hope you rot in hell, you fucking bitch!
Before we see their far more humanizing reactions to their dead children, furthering our interpretation of Eva as a victim. This reversed approach to information, where we see the consequences before the actions, reminds me of the Black Mirror episode Shut Up and Dance, where we are treated to Kenny's persecution by vigilantes before we are told the magnitude of his crimes, priming us to form an empathetic bond with him to begin with and biasing our reactions to the reveal in advance. The simple fact that the film is from Eva's point of view and we are primed to empathize with her from the beginning stacks the deck against Kevin. We would rather believe that a toddler is a manipulative sociopath than believe that a woman we've empathized with could be an abusive mother. Many of the flashbacks are intercut with shots of Eva in the present timeline washing red liquid off of her hands, as if the entire framing of the movie is her attempt to assuage her guilt. In the final scene of the movie, Kevin seems vulnerable, less snarky, more human. The common interpretation is that prison brought him down several pegs, but this is also one of the few times we see him in the actual present of the film. A rare look at Kevin that isn't one of his mother's subjective memories, and it's practically the only time he doesn't seem like a soulless, disaffected sociopath. This video isn't supposed to be an analysis of character relationships or an argument about nature and nurture one way or the other. It's about editing and how the information implied with a cut can be more powerful than information that is directly shown on screen. Eva is a physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive parent. This is something that we are plainly and unambiguously shown, and yet most analysis downplays or straight up ignores this fact. Conversely, we are not shown Kevin blinding his sister or killing her guinea pig, nor are we shown any evidence to imply that he did, and yet most analysis treats it as an objective fact that he did these things. So, maybe Lev Kuleshov was onto something. But on the note of character analysis, I don't think this is a movie about the psychology of a born monster. It's a movie about an abusive parent from the subjective perspective of said parent. In Eva's mind, everything she did to her first child was deliberately provoked and she was somehow the victim in said relationship, and the negligence that harmed her second child was always someone else's fault. Her rant about fat people blaming inborn factors for their obesity when she thinks it's the result of their lack of personal responsibility is especially ironic, given that she spends the whole movie blaming nature for the way her son turned out and going out of her way to avoid responsibility. Kevin's stated motivation is a rebellion against the mundanity of suburban existence, killing for the sake of being newsworthy. Ironically, it is the same hatred of mundane domestic suburbia that leads Eva to resent him in the first place. She hates him for not fitting into the mold of an idealized parent-child relationship that she never actually wanted, but more accurately, she hates him for existing. It's no surprise that Kevin rejects her few attempts at connection given their obvious insincerity. He's known from a young age that his mother hates him and that both of them hate their lives. When Kevin is born, his birth is juxtaposed with guards tackling and restraining a prisoner. When Eva hears about the killing spree and leaves work, she runs through a door conspicuously marked escape. Eva, in the present timeline, has everything she wanted. Kevin is gone, the house she hated is sold, the domestic life she felt trapped by has dissolved. There's nothing stopping her from being in France. Yet, without him to scapegoat for all her problems, she's forced to confront responsibility. She willingly stays in a town full of people who hate her to be near the boy she spent her whole life resenting. Eva and Kevin both spend the movie sure of what they want and who the other is, but after seemingly getting it and confirming it, they end unsure.
I want you to tell me why.
I used to think I knew. Now I'm not so sure.
This is usually the part of the video where I tell you to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and you should still do all that, but it's now also the part of the video where I tell you that I now have a Patreon, and for as little as $1, you could have seen this video a week early on my Patreon page, and then for $5, you can vote on new video topics, and see cool little behind-the-scenes tidbits and extras and stuff. Sometimes, while I'm editing these videos, I'll notice things about the movie that don't make it into the video because they're off topic or I just didn't record them, and I'll be putting those on this Patreon. Any support you throw at me will help me make these videos more regularly and not once every 2 years. I'm aiming for, once or twice a month. So yeah, link is in the description or on the screen. And also like and subscribe and maybe leave a comment about your favorite SSRI. I tried Lexapro once, but it didn't do anything. Maybe I don't know. Okay, bye.